Is there a happy ending for us? What if my child won't read? What if my child is anxious? What if my child's not ready for school? What if my child stutters? What if? And none of us are exempt. Find that star and polish it. And then speech therapy just sounded like a good marriage between my love of languages and my love of clinical work. They're talking about the neurological age gap. The brains are starting to look different.
What is normal? What is the neurotypical child?
That is the million-dollar question.
First thing, when it comes to your work, one would think, well, times change and that is inevitable. But how much really has it changed in terms of, let's say, 20 years ago, children's development versus how it is now? Or is it just the knowledge and the awareness that has made us to look things with a different lens?
Things have indeed changed a lot, and things have remained the same. There are certain aspects of speech therapy that have changed, and that is all the neurodivergency that we are talking about now. When I was a first-year speech therapy student, we had a half an hour lecture on autism, and they told us that you probably never see an autistic person in your life. It's very rare. And they took us to Joburg to go and have a look at the Forest Town School, and they showed us and said, those kids, those 3 kids in that room, we're not allowed to enter because it would upset them, but they are autistic. And we looked at them through the window. I think the statistics for autism at that stage was 1 in 100,000 children. And the stats from the States is now like 1 in 40, 1 in 39. So that has changed. But as for the development of the child itself, that's still very much the same. And then this whole thing of neurodivergence, or nobody knows where these children have been before. Have they just been hidden? Have they been diagnosed with something else? And why is there this huge resurgence, and why are the numbers so high? So yes, that is something that has everybody baffled. But I tell you, if somebody tells you today that they know why autism has made such a huge, why the statistics are what they are, but that they know exactly why, and that they know exactly how to treat it, then I tell them, I think you're missing the point, because there are conference after conference. We are sort of feeling in the dark, finding it a bit of direction, but we actually don't know for sure. So intelligence is also on a spectrum, and we're not always sure whether the intelligence and the levels of autism are exactly tied 1 to 1. It's a very complicated syndrome, because it's not only a spectrum like that in one plane. As somebody said to me, don't shy away from diagnosis. If you can name it, you can tame it. And then the others would say, if you don't name it, you shame it. But very often people say, but have you named it correctly? So, and are you allowed to tame this? Isn't that the child's right to be as they are, as they have been created? So there's a lot of controversy. There are authors out there that say autism can be cured. So, oh yes, my child was nonverbal, this, that. Now that my child is 15, speaking 3 languages, and we have no more issues. And then one wonders whether the diagnosis at that age was correct, because it is a pervasive disorder or disability or different ability. That's another thing. Somebody said, don't call my child disabled. It's not disabled. It has a different ability. And another mother would say, don't call my child different abled. If I have to scrape the excrement off the walls and sheets night after night after the child is painted with its own excrement, that is a disability. It's not a different ability. So it depends on, from case to case, who you speak to.
I would imagine that the awareness and the information out there now within the internet, that it could even complicate, makes it everything, the dynamics very different when it comes to treating that child as well.
I think, a diagnosis like autism is like any diagnosis or a death in the family. You go through all these phases of first denial and then anger and then the whole period of making a deal, and then you start with your research, and then you get to peace. But in that period where people are doing the research, you have certain preformed ideas, and once you've got a certain idea in your brain, then ChatGPT, the whole internet, is very quick to give you the information that you want. So you, depending on what search you're doing and how you're searching for it, you might get your hopes and aspirations verified or not. So yes, it is a difficult journey, and one always hopes that the family, they arrive at a place where people accept them as for the child as the child is at that stage, and then see how we can make this child or help this child become the best version of themselves within that child's limitations, the best version. The main thing is to get to a place where people can accommodate family, mom, dad, and child, and there will be waves, there will be conflict, there will be things. It's not as plain sailing. A child with special needs has parents with special needs. They have very, very special needs. It's parents who deal with a child with special needs. They are the most remarkable human beings on this planet.
When I read your book, Help My Child Is Atypical, my first thought was that should be handed to every parent in a maternity ward. It's like a roadmap. And it covers so many different complexities and the questions. It's not just my child is atypical. The question comes even, what is normal? What is the neurotypical child?
What is neurotypical? That is the million-dollar question. Because as we sit here, we are conversing, and we seem to be quite normal, but each of us, we have our own difficulties, our own problems, sensory problems that we could sort of identify with a person with sensory issues, a person with hearing issues, with anxiety, with whatever the other issues a child might battle with.
And that is the worry and the fear at the parent's mind.
The topic that came up now was autism or neurodivergence, but there are so many other things. So the book was an effort to tell parents, if you have that what if my child can't hear? What then? Where do we go to? Who do we see? How would we know? Is there a happy ending for us? What if my child won't read? What if my child is anxious? What if my child's not ready for school? What if my child stutters? What do I do? How do we handle this? So, yes, it's a bit of like licorice all sorts. It's a beginning, because each of these what-ifs merits a whole encyclopedia. But parents are in a hurry. Somebody said to me, oh, well, you've just summarized the internet for parents. And I said, well, I tried not to. That's why I asked people in the industry, what if I ask you this question, how would you answer it? How would you guide parents? So we hoped with the people that were involved in the book that we've got some real life people giving real life advice. AI could be either our enemy or our friend, but I think the litmus test is, if you have a statement that somebody has made and you go and check it against AI, you should get answers that are similar. But here is somebody that's in the practice in this country, not in England or in Canada, where there's a fantastic national health system. Here we are in this system. What do we do here? So it was a first effort. There's not been a book like this in our language, in Afrikaans or in South Africa before, and it's something that needs to be updated at least every 5 years because of facilities that suddenly pop up that can help children, tendencies that change, new research that surface. So yeah, it's something that keeps on having to be updated. Which I'm going to do is to reissue these books. The next one would be called Different, Not Less. This is help. And I think at that stage it was like, parents, help. Where can I find help? Now I want more understanding and say, okay, you've now seen there is help, but why are they different, but not less? So that would be the next topic, but that was the translation, and this was the original. And this one has a slightly different strapline. That one says early intervention, eh?
Yeah,
And this one says, if I translate this literally, discover the star in your different child. But because the ster and underster, ster is star in Afrikaans, and underster is different. So find that star. And that's one of the bylines of the book, or one of the aims of this book is every child has something special to offer, and try and find it. Don't just see them as this diagnosis. Find what is so interesting about the child. The tragedy with a child with special needs is that the moment the parents are faced with this new diagnosis, they feel so isolated. They feel so alone. They feel so overwhelmed with what's just landed in their lap. And that's where you have to start building your team. So that's a mother's and a father's job, is to find a team. I need to build these people around me because I can't do this by myself. And that is the byline of the book, is early intervention and using the help that's available.
Understanding is the one key, and help and assistance. And like you said, child's happiness is the main thing. And something I read it also here, for parents and teachers.
Yes, they are part of the same team. We cannot exclude the one or the other. You cannot outsource your child and say, here, catch. You now look after that child, it's yours as well. And on the other hand, you cannot exclude the teacher from your process. You're all part of it. And teachers really, they sit with a problem these days that they have inclusive classes. In South Africa, we do not have the luxury of having schools for every child's needs. In the old days, they talked about exclusive education. That's when only the kids who could learn went to school. Those who couldn't learn stayed at home. Any impediment, stay home. Then eventually they had like a few special schools, and the rest, those who didn't fit in, stayed at home, and then the normal kids went to the normal school. And eventually they started like a aid class at school. They took the kids out of that mainstream school for extra help. And that has fallen away in South Africa. There's just no money in education. So there are no more aid classes, there are no more aid class teachers, which is a sad thing, because those kids could phase back into the mainstream classroom and be taken out again when they needed extra help. Now all those children are just one big happy mix. Many of the kids that should actually be in a school for kids with special needs, and it's an inclusive classroom like a bag of licorice, all sorts. It's all sorts, and the teacher has to manage. So when I talk at schools, some remedial schools, some mainstream schools, how do you manage? How do you form your groups? Because unfortunately, you have to form groups to pander to their needs. The faster readers, the slower readers, then sometimes the faster reader with the slower readers. Or we build a little screen, or we make a little tent. They call it a snoozelen room, where there's maybe lava lamps and a soft bed or bean bag, somewhere that they can go to just escape the sensory overload. Very often it's a grandparent or somebody in the family with finances that would come to the fore and say, listen, it's my grandchild sitting in that class going to pieces. We would like to furnish a room like that for children with those needs. Because from the normal budget, it would never be possible. The gist of the story is our teachers have to cope with inclusive classes, and that's why they need a book like that to try and, okay, this is the problem with the child. If that child has a hearing aid, where should that child sit? On that side or on this side? How should I give my instructions? If these kids have auditory processing problems, how should I give my commands in class? Should I put them in a separate corner so I can talk to them separately? Should I structure my class so that everybody has the same, we go through the same process of listening? And what I normally tell teachers is that your point of departure is that everybody in my class has either a sensory issue or an auditory issue or some kind of learning disorder. You will be a better teacher. because you're not going to talk fast. You're not going to talk with your back to the class. You're not going to give an instruction once only. You're not going to give an instruction when the class is making a noise. You will not have a classroom bursting with color because it's too distracting. This is the way you're going to do it. You will have your visual day program on the wall. You will follow it religiously so that the kids with issues don't get anxious. They know what the next step will be. So let's structure your classroom as though everybody has a problem. And I promise you, your stress levels will come down. You're going to have a better outcome. The smart kid will also benefit from that. And the kid with issues will definitely benefit.
You mentioned something, if the teachers would be just more curious, it would make the life of teachers and the child much easier.
Yes, I would walk with the headmaster and the parent towards the teacher and say, listen, on Monday, dear Johnny is going to join your class. He's been diagnosed with this or that, and you see it in the teacher's face. Either nod me or twinkle, really? And the teacher says, really? Is the teacher who's going to make a difference? Because they're going to start reading up about it. They're going to see it as a challenge, where the other one just feels, okay, just keep on loading. So the teacher's attitude is everything. And that's also why I wanted to give them something to read. So just become a bit more curious about all these different things. You would find it fascinating. And the other thing I tell teachers is, what if it is your child? What if? And none of us are exempt. None of us can say, I will not have a child, a grandchild, a friend's child. You have no guarantees in life. This book has also been aimed at the family living in rural areas. Far away, they can't go drive and see a occupational therapist once a week. They can't see the speech therapist. What do they do on that lonely farm with this child? So that is why there's been some advice given. This is what we can do. You don't need to have a trained speech therapist with a degree. You can have somebody loving doing X, Y, and Z with this child. The main thing is the connection between the child and the minder, or the child and the therapist. The lady doing your washing and ironing could be your speech therapist. She could be your occupational therapist. She only knows how, because champions come in all shapes and sizes, and they actually keep the parents' arms up in the air because they tend to just want to flop down. They need to be supported by a team. And for every family, that team would be different. But as long as the parents know that they're not alone, because the moment you become isolated, this just starts overwhelming you. It can really affect the marriage, the relationship between mom and dad, and all that it revolves around about being that child with the problem, instead of having help and then being able to celebrate the child and its differences. Because once it becomes an overwhelming factor in their lives, you lose joy, and life is too short not to have joy. And every child that's slightly different or very different can still offer joy, as long as that child is happy in its body, as long as you know what that child needs to also be happy. And I think that's all we want for our children in the end is my child happy? Whether my child can't hear properly or needs hearing aids, whether my child has a speech impediment, whether my child has got severe anxiety, or whatever my child's problem is. As long as we know my child is now in a happy place, can function, then we can all relax and enjoy each other.
You are also, Christien, with all of what you're doing, you're still having the time to learn the languages.
Well, yes. Children are not great mental health at the moment. There are so many issues. It's though the left brain is just so dominant. The dopamine hits you get with all those little hidden sounds and blasts and activities, extremely, extremely addictive.
Every author has a story behind the stories.
Okay.
If you are, hypothetically, you were to write your autobiography, where would you start?
My goodness, I've never given that any thought, but I know that Okay, lê mooi. Because the last book I wrote about him, I'll tell you the story about him as well.